Mission: Impossible Fallout maintains the good spirits of its predecessor. The franchise, starring Tom Cruise, should have grown weary long ago. Yet it continues to feed a fundamental hunger. Ah, plain, if you must, that your local cinema is stuffed with nothing but sequels. Just don't kid yourself that the stuffing is anything new. As Tom Cruise guns his motorbike around the Arc de Triomphe, against the traffic, naturally, in his latest venture, Mission: Impossible Fallout, you may tell yourself, yeah, nice, but didn't he ride a similar machine in Mission: Impossible Rogue Nation? Indeed he did. And don't forget the bike off in Mission: Impossible 2, when he and the villain did wheelies at each other, like stags locking antlers in the rutting season. But spare a thought for your great-great-grandparents, off to the pictures, more than a century ago. They, likewise, will have muttered, "Here we go again," as Helen Holmes every bit as determined as Cruise, and no less capable of performing her own stunts, mounted a motorbike and haired off in pursuit of a runway train. That's what she did in The Wild Engine, which was released in 1915. It was the 26th film in the Hazards of Helen series, and Holmes's last in the leading role, yet the franchise was far from done. There were 93 episodes to go. Movies, in short, picked up where serialized fiction left off. The idea that we should be rewarded for our loyalty with the promise of further thrills, or gags, may have been a marketing tool, designed to woo us back into the dark, but it continues to feed a fundamental hunger. We are storyvers, dependent on a diet of narrative, and the words "coming soon" are doubly tempting when we have already wolfed down an earlier portion of the product. Hence my appetite for Mission: Impossible Fallout. Given that the franchise is now a sexology, or a six-pack, or whatever, it should long since have grown weary, staled, and flat. Yet it has never been unprofitable, and around the halfway mark it began, unaccountably, to improve. The last movie, Rogue Nation, 2015, was the best to date, with the sequence set at the Opera, in Vienna, that I still watch on a quarterly basis. How can Fallout compete with that? To an extent, it can't. There was an unexpected suavity to Rogue Nation, thanks to the tuxedos, the snatches of Puccini, and the stride of the plot, which suggested that saving the world might yet be achieved in style. The new film, though longer, it runs for nearly 2.5 hours, somehow feels more rushed, while sticking to the belief that, in the search for the right kind of force, you can't beat brute. Thus, we get Henry Cavill's August Walker, a homicidal slab of meat from the CIA who could slice you open with a single swipe of his mustache. We also get a three-person brawl in a man's room, which causes irreparable damage to the sanitary ware, and which is clearly embedded to the punch-up at the start of Casino Royale, 2006, the scene in which Daniel Craig, fresh to the role of 007, showed his credentials by destroying a toilet cubicle. In more gratifying ways, however, Fallout maintains the good spirits of its predecessor. Many of the cast are back for more. Hello again to Solomon Lane, Sean Harris, the villain who could use a moral conscience and a bottle of throat linctus, to Ilsa Faust, Rebecca Ferguson, notionally a British agent, although you can never tell, and to Alan Hunley, Alec Baldwin, the middleman between the U.S. government and the Impossible Missions Force. Cruise, as usual, plays Ethan Hunt, the sharp end of the IMF, with Benji, Simon Pegg, and Luther, Ving Rhames, as his fixers. The director of Rogue Nation, Christopher McQuarrie, returns for duty, too. The word followed and the title derives not, as you might imagine, from Ethan's pathological urge to tumble out of aircraft, or high windows, but from 3 hefty spheres of plutonium. Where they hung, perhaps, outside the shop of a radioactive pawnbroker. Anyway, they go missing, and Hunley suspects a sinister group called the Apostles. They could be the same apostles who convene at Cambridge in semi-secrecy, for the purposes of intellectual discussion, and whose past members include Tennyson and John Maynard Keynes, but, on balance, I think not. What matters is that, with a nuclear explosion pending, Ethan has 72 hours to get those balls back. Intellectual discussion will have to wait. At a certain point in any movie franchise, the self-references become less jaunty and more needling, with characters who jab at one another's raison d'etre. We all know the tape recording to which, at the outset of every tale, Ethan has to listen, complete with its gentlemanly caveat, "Your mission, should you choose to accept it." On this occasion, that offer is roundly mocked, as Lane says to Ethan, "Your mission, should you choose to accept it." I wonder, Ethan, did you ever choose not to? An excellent question, and the mood is toughened by Hunley's boss, Erica Sloane, Angela Bassett, who describes the IMF as a bunch of grown men in rubber masks playing trick or treat. The masks have been a proud staple of the Mission Impossible film since 1996, when what appeared to be Jon Voight unpeeled his features to reveal those of Cruise. Don't mention the height difference. Thenceforth, throughout the series, we have been permanently and deliciously unable to decide who, at any moment, is who. Followed is extra confusing in this regard, because Ethan's former wife, Julia, Michelle Monaghan, absent since Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, 2011, shows up anew and turns out to bear a strange resemblance to Ilsa Faust. One woman, 2 masks? 2 women, 1 mask? God knows. In terms of female representation, the Mission Impossible saga was woefully slow off the mark. The original movie succeeded in wasting Emmanuel Bart and Kristen Scott Thomas, and it wasn't really until Ferguson sallied into film No. 5, toting an assassin's rifle, that progress began to be made. Fallout sustains the momentum, courtesy of Bassett, Monaghan, and Vanessa Kirby, last seen as Princess Margaret in The Crown, and now granted the type of part that a yawning royal might dream of, a negotiator known as the White Widow, whose motives are no easier to discern, or to guard against, than the knife that she straps to her thigh. What these women bring to the film is an adult impatience, gilded with sly amusement, at the international antics of the boys. "Please don't make me go through you," Ilsa warns Ethan, as if he were made of tissue paper. Helen Holmes would approve. Video from The New Yorker.